Summit.
Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to the Green Hydrogen Summit here at Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week 2026. Now, of course, this week in itself is very well recognized as a global platform for sustainability dialogue. And this particular forum we're having this afternoon, the Green Hydrogen Summit, continues that tradition of shaping ambitious conversations and collaboration around one of today's most dynamic energy frontiers. The discussions we will be having this afternoon sit at the very heart of the global energy transition, bringing together distinguished decision makers and experts such as yourselves to explore the ongoing role of green hydrogen in accelerating the transition to cleaner, more resilient energy systems. I'm Rosanna Lockwood, an international journalist and broadcaster, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here this afternoon to be your host over the next 2.5 hours, where we're going to explore what it takes to unlock demand, de-risk investment, and activate downstream markets to continue positioning green hydrogen as a cornerstone of a decarbonized global economy. So let's begin by setting the scene. Shortly, I will be welcoming to the stage a leader at the forefront of green hydrogen development, someone deeply involved in translating national ambition into real-world projects, and an authority on the development and growth of the green hydrogen sector here in the United Arab Emirates. Please join me now in welcoming to the stage for a special address on the state of the green hydrogen landscape, Mohammed Abdelkader Al Ramahi, Chief Hydrogen Officer at Masdar. Thank you.
Good afternoon to you all, ladies and gentlemen. What a great day. It gives me great honor, privilege, excitement, passion, all the positive auras in the world just to be here in front of you to launch the Green Hydrogen Summit within this year's edition 2026 Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week. And there is not a better platform to include this amazing and important summit than ADSW that has marked this year our 20th anniversary in Masdar. Yes, Masdar has been established in 2006, and this year marks 20 years of hard work, dedication, and commitment from the entire team of Masdar to always carry the flag of the United Arab Emirates and Abu Dhabi globally in the entire spectrum of the clean and renewable energy. We aim and aspire to be the #1 company, or at least one of the top 3 globally. We aspire the moon in the sky and beyond. We are now in more than 45 countries. We are now around 60+ gigawatt across the globe, and we target 100 gigawatt by the year 2030. Masdar has always been Abu Dhabi's flagship, champion, the leader, and one of the first movers in this region and the world when it comes to the efforts that are undertaken globally to mitigate climate change, to achieve net zero, to provide the energy security sustainably that is not only environmentally friendly, saving our Mother Earth for generations to come, but more importantly, that is economically viable. Masdar took that flag, then moved into the next phase back in 2022, when a decision was made to establish the green hydrogen business vertical within Masdar's umbrella and under the same brand. Green hydrogen, in my opinion, is inevitable. It's not something that we take in parallel or we stack it as a secondary option. It is a must if you want to achieve energy security, if we want to diversify our energy portfolio, and if we want to reach the global targets of net zero. If we now turn all the electricity on planet Earth across the entire globe into renewable energy sources, all electricity is renewable, we will only be able to mitigate 30 to 50% of the global carbon footprint. We cannot do more. The remaining 50 to 70% needs the molecule, needs the green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is required in hard-to-abate sectors, steel industries, aluminum, aviation, shipping, fertilizers and food security, co-firing, burning, long-haul transportation, and the list goes on and on and on. The molecule is truly the next generation of clean energy. Out of the molecule, we can produce the entire spectrum of all the fuels that we currently use sourced from fossils. E-kerosene, e-diesel, e-methane, which is equivalent to natural gas, and the list goes on and on and on. I stand in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, proud and tall, launching the Green Hydrogen Summit that spins from the womb of Abu Dhabi in our continuous endeavor to be always one of the pioneers, one of the first movers in the sustainable energy transition sector. And they call me sometimes the green man, they call me sometimes the chief green hydrogen officer, the one and only, couldn't be prouder, couldn't be more passionate and ambitious about this sector as we see it today. Yes, we faced some difficulties when we launched it. Yes, there was a bubble that created some sort of uncertainty, some doubts, especially from the leadership and the decision makers. But I think now we are back on earth. We are rationalizing our expectations. We are delivering what we promise. Across the globe, you will hear many projects and investment opportunities in green hydrogen that are reaching final investment decision. We've announced one back in November during ADPEC, and we will be announcing another one shortly. And we will continue that endeavor across the globe, focusing firstly in Abu Dhabi, spinning out of our commitment and mandate as per the Department of Energy policy that mandates Masdar exclusively on behalf of Abu Dhabi Inc. to lead the development of the green molecule here in Abu Dhabi and beyond to globe Earth. We believe that Abu Dhabi is best suited to be the next green hydrogen hub, producing the green molecule here in Abu Dhabi at the most cost-competitive manner, leveraging our position, our stability, our bankability, leveraging the infrastructure, storage, leveraging our maritime routes, our amazing network of partnership to export green hydrogen from Abu Dhabi to the world. We will continue developing projects across the globe, especially in Europe, because this is where the regulations and policies are most established, most influenced, and nowadays the green hydrogen needs to be incentivized, motivated, and pushed through such governance. Half of the global demand is expected in Europe, and this is why we are reinforcing our footprint over there. You will be hearing a lot of achievements by Masdar Green Hydrogen, and you will be hearing many practical projects being finalized, formalized, and on the ground. Before I end my speech, I owe a small token of appreciation and gratitude to, firstly, our amazing team, our Masdar green hydrogen team, who we call the A team. I have many of them sitting in front of me, and I tell you, Dr. Faye, Nizam, Ali, Anoud, all of you couldn't be more prouder of you. And I think Abu Dhabi and the leadership couldn't be more prouder of you. I salute you all. We all also owe appreciation and gratitude to our management and leadership who spare no effort into motivating us and empowering us to carry proudly the flag of UAE in this new, evolving, emerging sector to the world. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, sir. An utterly excellent and compelling opening address. If you weren't convinced up to that point, you are now. Abu Dhabi is and will continue to be a green hydrogen hub. He emphasized as well, of course, that green hydrogen is a must for achieving energy security, diversifying energy, and achieving net zero. All of you in this room know that we've moved beyond ambition when it comes to green hydrogen technology. What we need to talk about now is well beyond the margins of ambition. It's no longer a question of possibility. We're talking about pace, coordination, and demand to get green hydrogen out there into the world, doing what it needs to be doing to meet those goals. What remains critical to scaling their technology and shrinking the so-called green premium is turning that ambition, of course, into strong, predictable demand. Our next speaker is a recognized leader in energy and sustainability. She has an international perspective on hydrogen's role in the energy transition. And after her opening remarks, which I'm sure you will find equally compelling and give you a lot to think about, she will also be moderating our first panel discussion of the afternoon, which asks which demand signals will give producers the confidence to invest and turn early projects into a self-sustaining global industry. Please welcome to the stage Ivana Jamelkova, CEO of the Hydrogen Council.
Thank you so much, everybody. Ladies and gentlemen, it's absolutely brilliant to be here with you all in Abu Dhabi to kick off 2026 and bring in perspectives from the Hydrogen Council. Many of you are familiar. The Hydrogen Council is the world's largest and only CEO-led global alliance on hydrogen. And we're extremely proud to count Masdar as one of our active members, in fact, board members. And I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Hydrogen Council to congratulate them once again on their 20 very successful and impactful years in business, and especially from the hydrogen standpoint on their recent exciting deals with OMV. Well done and congratulations. Now, Mohammed already very eloquently kicked us off on the state of the global industry, and I will build on that. Now, let's be very clear. There's a lot of dynamic in hydrogen right now. There's a lot of noise. We all see the headlines, the conversations. We see it every day. And yes, there are challenges, there are concerns, there are bad news, there are project cancellations. And this is important, I say it in the same breath, and yet, the progress is clear. The global sector is moving. Those of you who are following Hydrogen Council's work know that we track every single publicly announced project out there to give you not our feelings and our hopes and our beliefs, but to give you hard data. And the hard data tell an extremely clear story. The global hydrogen industry has surpassed $110 billion in committed capital. That's 10 times growth in just the last 5 years, and 510 projects globally have now passed final investment decision and have gone into construction or operation. So that's real projects, real progress, and despite the challenges and concerns and bad headlines, the work is happening. Hydrogen is happening, hydrogen is moving. And it's not just the numbers. I came back from my little year-end break and I looked at the news. You know what was in the news? Major milestones on construction. NEOM, 90% complete. Beaumont, a large ammonia project in Texas, US, 97% complete, moving into commissioning. ACES Delta in Utah, 95% complete, moving into the next stage. Jupiter 1, a massive turbine now operational in China. Stegra, 60% complete. Lingen in Germany, targeting commissioning and full operation. So we really see it every day that these projects are happening, they're real, and hydrogen has really moved from ambition to delivery to building. Now, even all of these good news are in a way not good enough because we need to go bigger, we need to go faster, we need to keep building, we need to maintain that trajectory that we've seen over the last 5 years. So the key question is, how do we do that? And because the Hydrogen Council is a CEO-led organization, we have the benefit of speaking with some of the global leaders in the space. 200 of them came together just last month for our CEO summit of the hydrogen sector. And they laid out 5 fundamentals, 5 to-dos, if you will, for us as an industry. The number 1 is demand. We do not need vague promises and signals. We need firm demand. We need targets. We need mandates. We need the hard things that get this snowball rolling, that lock in the business case, that get the industry off the ground. Second priority, policy. We do not need wavering. We do not need softening. We do not need doubts. We do not need brilliant theories that do not work in practice and in fact make business life harder. What we really need is clear, practical, durable policy direction so that unlocks capital. We build trust, we build consistency and continuity over time. Number 3, infrastructure. Very clear, hydrogen offers a new way of connecting supply and demand centers, and we should really take the opportunity to build out the infrastructure that will not only contribute to making our energy more sustainable, but also more secure and resilient. Nearly last, number 4, standards, a no-brainer. All of us in this room and outside need to speak a common language so we can define, verify, measure, verify, and certify the attributes of our molecules and do business on the back of it. And the very last one, but very much not the least one, partnerships. All of you, all of us, all of those who have been building hydrogen for the last several years, all of you who have actually made it possible. So my message to you is a very simple one. Please keep it up. Please keep building. Please keep that courage, that focus, that collaboration to make it happen. Thank you. And as you can see, I'm not going anywhere because I feel that I would not do you justice with just that little 5-minute executive summary. And I'm bringing reinforcements. I'm absolutely delighted that we will develop further on the topic from ambition to delivery, from potential to profit. So please join me in welcoming our fantastic panel. I will introduce them in just a second. Let's give them a hand. Please, gentlemen, come on stage. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome some of the key practitioners and experts in hydrogen. Ah, there you are. Oh my goodness, you're arriving from the other side. Superb. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. All right, so 5 leaders, builders, doers, who do not need much of an introduction, but let us take it in good order. I will warn everybody that we have 35 minutes sharp, so our challenge will be to convey that incredible, I was told 35, we're taking 35. So the challenge we have here on stage is to convey this incredible wealth of knowledge and expertise to you all. But let's start. Like I said, we're starting 2026. I understand the new trend is not to make a New Year resolution, but send an intention. People choose a word, a symbolic word that in their mind really encapsulates what the new year will be all about. So Horst, I will challenge you first. What is your word for 2026 when it comes to hydrogen?
I would believe it's ESAF, because that's basically what should have brought of us all here. So we travel a lot. So I think ESAF is really something that we need to be working on hard to meet the demand that's coming. And so my word would be ESAF, and push the development of ESAF projects to be ready when the quotas come.
Super clear. All right, I'm making a list. Cornelius.
Well, I think ESAF is a very good point. I think projects in general, projects execution, we need to build confidence, to create momentum, and to continue the path, which led us from 10 to 110 billion 5 years already. So continue the path and go towards a phase of more exponential growth.
Yes, because what better way to show that it's working than building it, right, Manuel?
My word would be consolidation.
Consolidation, all right.
I think what we will see this year is a consolidation on the project landscape, also on the technologies. And I even believe, from my perspective, a consolidation on the customer base is taking place. And that is not a bad thing, it's a good thing, because it will allow everybody to focus.
Focus, that's exactly right. Superb. Joaquin.
I chose 2 words.
Okay.
Which is do it. Do it.
Do it.
Don't think about it, do it.
Wow.
And we need to prioritize. I agree with all the other words, of course. We need to look into short-term uses, real uses of hydrogen and e-fuels, and then prioritize everything, infrastructure, subsidies, everything that is needed for the project to be done.
Super powerful. Just do it. I'm seeing the Nikes. Raphael, the last word on this.
I want to see hydrogen flow. Open the tap, think in terms of a chain from upstream to downstream, and unlock it so that it flows. Because if it flows, then all the companies that are doing something around hydrogen have a place to find, and they can express themselves.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you all. I think this immediately opens up a number of topics. So just to summarize, ESAF as a massive opportunity, the projects, right, the confidence, the building, making it happen. Manuel, consolidation not as a bad news, but rather focus, right, streamlining, focusing. Joaquin, do it. Love that one. And Raphael, flow. I think that those are really powerful themes. So with your permission, let's go a little deeper into what this actually really means. And I'll start with the easy question. What is stopping us? What is stopping us from doing it? Where do you see the biggest challenge right now? Raphael, if I may start from that end.
I think that in a certain number of hydrogen chains, we do not think super efficiently from end to end. Sometimes we completely forget that there's going to be a terminal, a landing point, a cracker. You think about, on the one hand side, the production, and on the other hand side, the off-taker. I think our Japanese friends have been very successful in thinking about that. If you look at the project that have been supported by the government, they really look at from the very top to the very end, and they look all around the chain, and then they look at where the Japanese companies are active and making sure to pick and support with public money only the project where it's really clear from end to end and with Japanese players all along the chain. I think that everybody should learn from that approach.
So that coordination, that structuring, the orchestration of, tell us more.
Yeah, I think what my colleague said, make it simple, look at it from a very operational point of view, and unlock it from having a pure industrial approach. Not just a question of vision of regulation. Make it happen, make it simple, and do not forget a single point. Too often, one part is missing.
That's right. Sometimes left arm does not know what right arm is doing, and that's where we have problems. So let's dig a little bit deeper, because I don't want us just to tee up the challenges. I really want us to also maybe propose how exactly that could be done. Do you have any thoughts? Do you have a brilliant idea on who should be doing this? How
I'll take one example. I mean, we are here in the Middle East. Obviously, I'm from Europe. There is a EU GCC cooperation. A lot of players here in the region wants to sell hydrogen into Europe. They say, Europe, please aggregate demands. It's going to make it easier for the producer here. So you may know that Europe gathered via a platform all the potential off-taker. Guess what? They did not invite around the table people who have cracking capacities or jetties. Very simple, but I think this has been corrected. But in the first meetings, was not the case. This is a very concrete, simple example of how, it's like when you are going up a staircase and you just meet one stair.
Not particularly rocket science, but
no,
just needs to be done.
It's simple. So that's one example. If still not the case, then it should be tackled. I believe that over Christmas, they have re-engineered the design of their round tables, and that 2026 should show us some result on that end.
Fantastic. So new hope for 2026. Fantastic. Joaquin, do it. What's stopping us from doing it?
So I think I totally agree with my colleague. I think there are three main things that is stopping many players from taking decisions, investment decisions. One is lack of visibility of the demand. The word ISAF is pointing to one pocket of certain demand, but many players are lacking visibility of what is the market there and what is willing to pay for this, which is connected to the next one, which is uncertain regulation, because demand is not there, because mandates are not clear or could be changed, and they are not the right incentives. And then finally, the project-on-project risk. I mean, the value chain is very long from the renewables to where you deliver the molecule, and there are some missing pieces that nobody is taking care of. In many cases, these are related to infrastructures. Now, could be midstream infrastructure, could be transmission lines, port facilities. So I think these are the three key elements.
Very clear. So where should we begin? And do you see any good examples, tools, solutions? What would you recommend we do to cut through some of that?
So if I think of each of the three on the demand, again, let's prioritize and concentrate the efforts on those, let's say, pockets of demand that are available short term, so not big technological changes. If we think about ISAF, it's a clear case. You can use very easily ISAF mix with jet fuel in an airplane today, and where the impact in the final price of whatever you are selling, in this case, airline tickets, is negligible. So the green premium is diluted in the cost. So that does not require the big effort to make the hydrogen acceptable to the final consumer. And then prioritize also how you treat, let's say, the permitting and the public investment in certain infrastructure. So we had a lot of speculation around hydrogen, a lot of players trying to make easy money. And I think we should concentrate infrastructures, permitting, subsidies in those credible players who either have mandates, obligations, or who can make this happen, really. And with that, I think we can accelerate.
The low-hanging fruit where we can make an impact in the immediate, right? But I think it links very beautifully with what Raphael said, right? The concentration, the prioritization. Let's make a plan instead of running around and sort of waiting for each other. Manuel, if I can take it from there, consolidation is a good thing. But where are the challenges? Where are the difficult things? What do you believe is right now? What's keeping you up awake at night? The classic question.
So to build on what Joaquin said, I think we lack consistency in the approach how we look over continents, in the approach how we develop the projects, how we manage the risk inside the projects, because there are still too many options on the table. And I think this effect of consolidation, which I appreciate, will help us to rule out some options and focus on how to resolve the issues that are really at hand. And one issue that we need to face it is also the total installed cost of the assets that are to be constructed. And that is something where the industry needs to deliver. That keeps me awake quite a bit, because we all know that the technology as it is today, with the risk that we factor in, comes at a price that is very difficult to place in the market. We are not necessarily in the money. But that doesn't mean we can't change it. But we need to have a very consistent approach on how to evaluate the risk in the technology, how to evaluate pricing, how to go to reasonable EPC prices, and then ultimately deliver that. And that is something where the industry now also has an obligation to show that it works.
What's the one thing that would help you sleep better?
Sorry?
What's the one thing that would help you sleep better? I understand the principle, but what is the specific action or what is the specific signal? When you see it, you say, all right, now I get my 8 hours.
Yeah. So we need to accept what's possible. We have constructed meanwhile 140 megawatt of PEM plants and a gigawatt in execution in total. And that allows us to bring back now data from the field, from running assets and from assets in operation. So this is the silver lining at the horizon, because we are now at a tipping point where the first batch of, let's say, this first wave of subsidized projects gets into operation and gives us feedback on technology and execution on how to manage the risk. This needs to go back now into technology development, into how to deploy the project and how to set projects up. And with this, we will manage to get significant risk adders out of the equation. I have more hopes that we are better in managing risk than we are getting cost out of the core technology, because that it is what it is. But all around it, that is where I believe we can save a lot of money, which brings us much closer to acceptable total cost.
So with all of the data, we can make more informed and intentional choices,
Correct.
which will allow us to move faster and indeed make some savings on the cost side. Cornelius, congratulations on your new report. I had the chance to be there yesterday, a superb event. We've already talked about the good stuff, but what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in your research?
Well, I think on consolidation, first of all, also the fact that the speculation is out and people come to a reasonable level of risk sharing. I think there were many opportunists that, just free ride, I want to make money, as Manuel said. I think the two big things where we need to jointly work on is, number one, green is actually not expensive. Gray is too cheap. So we need a price for CO2. And we need to move on that and not wait any more year. We need a price for CO2 now, symbolic. Imagine the effect, just $5 or $10 per ton, and a clear roadmap that this will come. This is the single most factor, hydrogen, energy transformation, which will have the biggest impact, of course, phasing out subsidies a little bit. And then, of course, we need to work together to create the right demand. We don't need subsidies. Look at the success story of the energy transformation in MENA. This is purely market-driven. Solar is the cheapest form of energy. In 25, the first sub, 1 cent per kilowatt hour. And no subsidies, just market-driven. But we need demand. So I would speak about indirect kind of subsidies, and this is quotas. So for example, for e-stuff, the fact that UAE is considering possibly to introduce a quota, this is a massive factor. We need certainty, continuity, we need demand creation.
Yesterday you said something at the launch of the MENA Energy Outlook report, just to be clear for those who may have missed it, I highly recommend a download from your website. You said something very important, and that is that it takes time. It takes time, but it's coming. So how do we keep people focused? How do we manage expectations? How do we keep going when it gets hard? Because we are in that moment of, good news, bad news, and trying to keep everybody focused and moving forward. How do we do that?
It's a very good question, Ivana. Well, we started 17 years ago when solar wind was exotic, expensive, we needed. Now it's happening. So the persistency, let's say, the patience is in our DNA. So I think what we need to do is to work in partnerships, in sound facts and figures, in solid communication, because sometimes what you see also on LinkedIn or others is really a pity, because there's so much noise and there's so much fake news and so much misinformation. So this is where we see our role. Misinformation is one of the biggest challenges, I think, of these times, and in our industry as well. So we need to, that's our core activity, to put together good, sound reports, thought leadership, facts and figures, and communicate to the right people, with the right people. I think this is a factor which is often underestimated, but we work on it, we believe in it.
Back to your message on trust and confidence, right? The importance of the fact-based perspective, the data-based decision-making that you just talked about, Manuel. Now we have the benefit of that information. Now we have the benefit of the data. So let's put it to good use. Horst, with your permission, I will end with you on the challenges and opportunities. So something that has not yet been said, because I imagine you would agree with some of the items mentioned here, but go for it.
I think, look, I can just talk from my own experience. We started betting on hydrogen back end of 2019. I remember well because it was the whole, let's say, the whole COVID era somehow impregnated also the start of the hydrogen era. Well, hydrogen era started much before, but the hydrogen hype at the beginning.
That's right.
And we started developing projects at the time without really knowing what we will be earning with them. And people were looking at me and saying, why are you doing this? So first of all, we are doing it with our own money because we think that we need to move. And that's exactly what we say. We need to move. Then we need to focus. Then we need to make sure that investors keep up the speed and keep informed, because after 5 years and almost nothing happening, because we do agree that with all the announcements we had, what has happened is close to nothing. So with close to nothing happening, keeping investors piling in money, it starts to get a bit difficult. That's also what we have felt. You know, at the beginning it was a fancy talk, hydrogen great.
Everybody wanted to be in, right? The number of people who had roles on LinkedIn to do with hydrogen. Remember those times?
And suddenly people said, yeah, hydrogen, and how do you earn money with that? We don't earn money with it, we just invest there. So that's one thing, and then of course funding needs to continue flowing, and you need to really develop projects from the ground on. So what we do, we invest in the development greenfield projects from ground on, where we start with the offtake. So where is a clear offtake, and offtake can be CO2 linked or is mainly CO2 linked, so where there's a penalty, for example, that makes sense. So doing things that make sense and not reinventing the wheel. If there's an existing infrastructure for transport, if there are pipelines, if there is an ecosystem that's working, let's not try to redo everything, because that will not fly. You know, it will not fly to say, okay, let's now suddenly change all the turbines of all the aircrafts, because that will not happen, because they normally are bought to fly for 30 years. So this cannot happen. It can also not happen to change the trucks that bring the fuel to the planes. So all of this needs to stay in place, and we need to figure out how we can penetrate this without making it more expensive than it already is. I think that's groundwork from the ground, development, keeping investors up to speed, informing them about what you're doing, to keep the money flowing, and equity. You need a lot of equity, because no fund will invest, or very few funds. There are a couple around, but it's homeopathic, you know.
You need volume.
You need volume, you need equity to really invest, because only when things are de-risked, then the large funds with the LPs behind, with the risk-averse investment approach will come in. And this is something that we need to do now, because people are losing their patience on it, you know, and the appetite.
But it does take time, right? I mean, as Cornelius just said, So we need to keep everybody focused. Look, very little will happen without governments. We don't have governments on this panel, but I think it's really key that we work with governments so that they stay focused and they are aware of the realities on the ground. Like you say, there's a lot of misinformation. Everybody reads the headlines. It seems that hydrogen is failing. If I just look at the news in the main media, it's all project cancellations, scandalous stories about, what have you. So how do we continue working productively with governments, realize our respective roles and responsibilities in making it happen, and really continue to motivate governments? Just think of what it's like to be a policymaker today, right? Complete recalibration of global priorities, geopolitics, strategic alliances. I mean, every day we wake up to some kind of news that we thought was unimaginable, impossible, just 2 years ago, 5 years ago. So lots of moving ground, shifting grounds, dynamics. How are you supposed to manage this? Who do you believe? What do you do first? How do you spend taxpayers' money responsibly? So I'll give you the opportunity, because I know we're on stream as well, so there will be a recording of all of this, to send a message to a government of your choice or policymakers at large. Raphael, I'll start with you if that's all right, because I know you've been very involved in the public-private collaboration. So if you could send one powerful message to a government or governments right now, what would it be?
Two things. I will echo also what Orsh said on financing. That relates to your current question. First, in terms of pure regulation, a number of governments have put things in place. Certain things don't work. It's absolutely obvious. Re-engineer them fast, very fast.
Rip the Band-Aid, right?
Rip it, change it, because we are in the early days. It doesn't work, change it with speed, because this is what it is all about. Second, still in the regulatory space, we are in a kind of divided world right now. Clean tech was a way to unite us. We shouldn't move from one word with fossil energy to another one with clean tech as one takes it all, or I win, you lose. We need to think about win-win collaboration. If I take here, coming back, GCCU, I sell you hydrogen, maybe you buy my equipment. I don't see that necessarily happening. And regarding finance, COP28 was extremely important, and also Ivana with the Hydrogen Council, Sultana Jaber, you did a marvelous job. Hydrogen was put in the agenda of the COP here, in the Emirates.
Right.
And alongside with it, there was a very, very strong commitment from the financial community. And the financial community is as diverse as the world of clean tech, going from very large funds doing equity in project, what we're talking about, but we should not forget the business angel, the VC, the growth equity. You have picks and shovels that are part of the hydrogen equation, equipment company. In the gold rush, it's the picks and shovel that made the money, not only the gold mines. Same in the hydrogen economy. And we had a very interesting space in 2018-19 where you could invest and go with the new wave going up, valuation of hydrogen, a picks and shovel company. Now it went down. It's the right time to invest. We need to continue passing that message. It's a very good time to invest. Valuations are lower, and all these companies are out there and deserve to have funding for future, for our future, because, the climate bomb is ticking, and we shouldn't forget it. You can play it the way you want. You can say it's too expensive. No, it's there.
Yeah. Thank you.
So those two things, and so governments need to remain committed on the financial part and supporting that space. It was initiated here, it should continue. I see it fading a bit.
Super. Thank you so much, Raphael. Very powerful. Conscious of time, sharp messages to the government. Joaquin.
So I agree that regulation could be improved, but sometimes if you decide to change regulation, you make it even worse, because then investors hesitate. Is this new regulation here to stay, or is it going to be changed again in the future? So my message would be, first, remove the obstacles with the existing regulation, even if it's not perfect. And we have a lot of obstacles, lacking of certain infrastructures, permitting procedures that are completely decoupled. We have a long value chain, but we have renewables, we have the hydrogen projects, the downstream, let's say, e-fuels projects, and then the midstream and final downstream infrastructures. And not all of them are synchronized, but mainly incentivize the demand. Because you can create, and we have in Europe, certain obligations and penalties, but there is a missing piece. We need to go to the final consumer, which is not necessarily the maritime company or the airline. It is the final consumer buying a car with green steel or buying an airplane ticket, and the impact is so negligible that if you can offset that with a tax incentive or tax rebate, you create immediate credibility of the demand. Then the market, and then investments. And once you grow, levelized cost of hydrogen will decline very quickly, and then we don't need any support. This is what happens with renewables in electricity, and I think this is the case for
And that's so key to get the snowball moving, because then the governments can reach their objectives, whether it's security, climate, affordability, and so on. Manuel, what do you want to choose a specific government? Do you want to send a message to policymakers? Generally, what would you like to say?
So first of all, we haven't worked enough on the demand side. Let's say I talk to Europe for the sake of the argument. We have worked on the supply side. We put subsidies on factories and on production facilities, but we have done a poor job on the demand side. And especially the examples that Joaquin just mentioned. This needs to be fixed. That's the only place where I would like to have more regulation, because we don't have any or not enough. And for those that we already have, that we want to improve, the only ask I have is to see more accountability. So for the last years, time and again, the industry has been promised issuing permits, regulations, updates, changes. They never came on time. In the private sector, you do this 2 times, you find yourself another job. And we need to have this sense of accountability. There are people out there, and I'm looking more like Horst and his fellows, who have serious exposure in the market, and we are sitting there waiting. And this cannot continue like this.
So the follow through is really absolutely critical. Brilliant. Cornelius, what would you like to say to decision makers who are agonizing right now over where to prioritize and what to do with this hydrogen?
Yeah, I recently wrote an editorial on speed. Speed is becoming Europe's biggest disadvantage. You know, the bureaucracy and the timings, also Manuel was mentioning, speed is really a disaster, and the world is moving faster. China is doing impressive things, is continuing to over-deliver, the region here over-delivers, and Europe is losing out. So speed, we cannot continue to think in these time frames. This is really impossible, and it will inevitably lead to a further decline of Europe. Secondly, on the demand creation, people know what we've been preaching for several years on strategic hydrogen reserve, to introduce a similar kind of mechanism amount. If you talk about strategic gas reserves, 3 months consumption, imagine what happens if Europe introduces and gets its act together, different countries leading a strategic hydrogen reserve procurement that would immediately create several million, up to 3 million tons of hydrogen. Imagine the projects resulting of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Very clear. And we didn't discuss that at the beginning, but of the 110 globally committed billions, 33 are in China. And the growth trajectory is absolutely immense. So we're looking at double digits and really far ahead of the rest of the pack. While in Europe, the movement has been slow. It's been slow. So I think going back to your point, Raphael, maybe that honesty, or Joaquin, you mentioned about this as well. What is and isn't working, and let's fix it. And if perhaps the governments alone do not have the solutions, the data, right, that direct insight, then let's work together to make sure that those solutions are really informed and based in business reality. Horst, you will have the last word again on this one. So what would you like to say to governments?
Well, I think there's no general comment. It's listen to the off-takers, look at what's happening, and also see the opportunity, because I don't see Europe increasing much its oil production. Europe is not very well known for huge oil production, right? We see that some parts of the world, without mentioning specific names, are focusing more on oil again. And from my understanding, there's another molecule available that can substitute in certain applications very specifically the use of fossil, or in combination solve part of the equation. So let's focus on that. It's like let's not make our life more complicated. So the only way that Europe and also countries here they see it, here they have oil, but they still invest. Mohammed just said it. They still invest in this because at some point the oil will be over. And we will stay there with thousands of airplanes that should bring us from A to B, flying on what? On CO2 only? No. We need to make now the investments that it doesn't happen again, that we reach 2030, 2035, and then we look at each other and said, if we had done this and that at the time, we wouldn't be facing the situation now. And then everybody needs to rush, everything gets more expensive, unnecessarily. So that's the message, and I think everybody knows pretty much what they need to do. They just need to start doing it and collaborating and towing in the same direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you were saying, while some markets are agonizing, others are moving decisively. And one day the train will have left the station. Look, I'm actually quite energized by this discussion. I thought it was going to be, everybody's down, very challenging and so on, but I'm not getting that sense from you at all. You're basically the antidote of some of the headlines. Yes, challenges, we spoke about them very openly, but focus, clarity, right? Solutions exist. We know what to do. We just need to make it happen. Now, if you look at our audience, practitioners, experts, leaders, builders who are actually making this happen every day, let's send them all a wish for 2026. What would you like to say to your fellow hydrogen builders for a successful year ahead? Horst?
That it is a profitable investment, and that we will be capable of making money with it.
Money. Excellent. Super wish for 2026. Cornelius.
Hydrogen is the best friend of renewables, so it connects all the sectors, and hydrogen is unstoppable. We need to be a bit patient, but I'm 100% sure and confident we'll make it happen together.
Super. So confidence. Excellent. Manuel.
As we are executing projects more and more everywhere, my wish is that everybody manages to execute safe and reliable. The last thing we need is a safety incident, and we are in the process of debugging and de-risking technology. Things can go wrong, things will go wrong, and I wish that this is all very much contained and under control.
Super. Joaquin.
I would say just keep believing, keep working. This is happening.
All right, brilliant. Rafael.
My take would be follow the sun. That's where it's happening. We don't have Asian friends on stage. They could have also been there. Look at what's happening in China. It's not a mirage. It's really happening. Look at what's happening in Japan, Korea, here in the Middle East, in Northern Africa. In Europe, it's a little bit behind because of regulation. I'm not talking about Northern America, where unfortunately money is going out of clean tech with a rollover effect. So the sun is going to provide us the hydrogen, and the sun countries are also driving the forces. It's happening, it's real, and we should put money on it, no doubt. It's there, it's going to happen. People who don't see it,
super.
Let's
so
work.
we wish you a safe, prosperous year, full of confidence, action, and lots of sun.
and
Lots
money.
of sun.
And money.
And money, indeed. I think that's the key. So please join me in thanking our panel for this fantastic conversation. So appreciate it. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of the conference. Thank you, gentlemen. We leave this way? I will. Thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Ivana and our panelists. The takeaway message from that, from ambition to delivery. Now, demand and investment are, of course, also deeply intertwined. Scaling green hydrogen will depend not only on technology, but on enabling infrastructure as well, all the way from storage and pipelines to power and CO2 integration. Our next panel will explore what is needed to boost confidence and unlock the capital to build the backbone that will enable the green hydrogen economy to flourish. To moderate this discussion and to introduce the panelists, we will be welcoming to the stage Jason Symington, partner at A&O Shearman. First, a brief video from our sponsors Beer to provide some context.
Guided by a lasting legacy, we're shaping a sustainable future. As our purpose grows, so does our ambition to protect the environment, pioneer clean energy, revolutionize healthcare, and create smart cities. With cutting-edge technology at their heart, through a global presence and an extensive expertise, we're determined to empower others to be the difference, shaping a new era that grows beyond tomorrow.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the introduction, Rosanna. We are very excited to be on stage speaking with you this afternoon. For green ammonia and hydrogen producers and for their off-takers to really invest at scale, they need confidence that the infrastructure that is going to be needed to move those molecules from the place of production to the place of use are going to be in place when they need it. Over the past few years, in my practice of helping green ammonia and hydrogen producers negotiate bankable offtake agreements, I've seen firsthand experience situations where there are questions around the sufficiency and availability of hydrogen transportation and storage networks, creating complications for deals, and ultimately chilling investment in the hydrogen sector. To help examine certain challenges and opportunities with bringing this infrastructure online, I'm very excited to be joined up on stage today by Alicia Eastman, Managing Director of APC Investors and Board Member at Intercontinental Energy, a leading green hydrogen and ammonia producer. Lionel Sinai Sanel-Nikoff, Strategic Advisor at Beyond Aero, which is designing a hydrogen electric aircraft for zero emissions aviation. Professor Lourdes Vega, Founder and Director of the Research and Innovation Center on CO2 and Hydrogen at Khalifa University. And finally, Romain Verdier, Deputy CEO at Verso Energy, a French developer of industrial-scale green hydrogen and e-fuels hubs. So we're going to start this session by looking at some of the challenges associated with bringing this infrastructure online, and then we'll pivot and we'll look at some of the mechanisms that we have to overcome those challenges. Alicia, starting with you on challenges, putting your investor cap on. If you're looking at infrastructure investments in the hydrogen sector, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing?
I think infrastructure is in itself a challenge because it is so long-term, and it takes so long to actually execute. So I think you end up with a number of risks on top of one another. But obviously, without having a carbon tax and without having strong regulatory push to use hydrogen, it makes it a hard sell to build the infrastructure for it. And I think we had hoped that the IMO would have turned out differently in October, and hopefully it will be better in April. But things like that, an actual global mandate, something that actually compels companies to use hydrogen-based fuels, obviously that is going to make the infrastructure easier to build. So like all things, you have to have a market. And if that's not the case, you have things like, let's say, transportation on the ground, not shipping. We're talking about, trucking in Europe. I think there's still a lot of debate between whether things will be electric or hydrogen. And I think there's still people who think it has to be one or the other, or that we have to use the grid for hydrogen, when actually we could build two different sets of infrastructure and it could be cheaper. Yeah. But that's not entirely clear yet to a lot of people.
So lack of certainty on demand and market, and also technology selection playing into it.
Yeah.
Lourdes, similar question, but from a technical perspective. What do you see as some of the technical challenges and risks associated with putting this infrastructure in place that might be causing investors to pause a little bit before they put money in?
Thanks for the question, and thanks for the invitation. Actually, if you think of the technology risk, there are not that many. What I think from the investor's point of view, the investors are more concerned about the reliability and the predictability of the assets that we will use. Then I can give you a few examples related to this. For example, for the materials, how will they last? Are we repurposing the pipelines that we have for gas transportation now for hydrogen? Because we need to know the differences between them. So how do we do this in a safe and proper manner so that these pipelines will last? If we talk about the storage, we can have a storage, underground storage at the scale, but we don't have this everywhere. No? It's not geographically available for everyone. So if we talk about the storage on the surface, then we have the issues related to the materials, again, to leakage, to the type of, it's much more expensive and less efficient. Then we can talk also about the integration. So when we are going to develop these infrastructures, how much hydrogen are we producing, transporting that is needed in the final use? So we need to consider all this in order to lower the risk of the investors, and give them the confidence that what we are doing is correct. Yes, there are technologies there, but it's more at the scale level where we have to be worried and concerned.
So doing things kind of slow to start and building up to it is a way to perhaps de-risk some of the technology concerns that investors might have.
Correct. So the point is hydrogen is not new, correct? We had hydrogen in industry for a long time. What we are talking is about a different scale and for different needs. So that's what we need to consider in this case, the scale up and the design of this at the right size.
Okay. So if we're talking about scaling up and it'll be a process, it's not going to happen overnight. Lionel, as a potential end user for hydrogen in the aviation sector, do you have any concerns about lack of availability of infrastructure being there as and when you need it, or how are you seeing this play out?
First of all, I will start with a smile because I'm glad to be here, but also I'd like also to lighten the mood in the sense that I think we should see that from a very positive perspective. Today, we're at a great time where we have basically everything that is here and just need to be combined. So we come as Beyond Aero, for instance, as the offtake dream partner. And we are leveraging, because we're developing a hydrogen electric aircraft, starting with gaseous hydrogen, liquid will be for later, and we're entering the business aviation market as the initial market, which is a growing one. And so we're leveraging the existing ecosystem, basically, and technologies. We are able to start pretty fast in alignment with the regulators with what we have today available, which is already and growing a network for hydrogen for the land transportation. And that is pretty easy at the end of the day to bring that to the key airports for the key routes, which covers 80 to 90% of the requirement of this very visible industry, which is aviation. So yes, in the long run, commercial aviation will go with liquid where it's more complex. But gaseous hydrogen is a very good start for the industry, and we can start that pretty fast.
You touched on a good point there on certification. Yeah. I mean, we're moving around hydrogen at scale. Lourdes, what are some of the technical risks associated, not technical risks, but I guess safety and environmental risks associated with moving around hydrogen and derivatives at the types of scale that we're talking about?
So hydrogen and its derivatives are not the same with respect to that. So hydrogen is a very flammable and very light molecule. So we have to worry about this when we talk about safety or moving hydrogen around. The same is related to the breathability of the materials because of the hydrogen reaction, let's say. So then the good things about this is that we have been moving hydrogen before. So this is known. What we need to do is how to put this in the context of the new hydrogen economy, in the way we are moving that. For its derivatives, like methanol and ammonia, there are completely different issues. Then you can move them as liquids, and we know how to move liquids. So this is good, easy. You don't need that extreme conditions, but they are toxic. And then you can have things related to contamination of the water or the environment, etc. Again, there are rules already, because we already move ammonia and methanol that can be applied for this. But we need to consider this when we design the infrastructures. And now the difference is also that we are going to move hydrogen in places where there is population around. It's no isolated places. So this also needs to be considered as an additional safety for this. But overall, I think we need to build trust on people that we know how to do this, and we can do this in a safe manner. So we don't need to worry people, neither worry investors. We have to do the right thing as the industrial standards that we do.
We're moving this stuff cross-border and all around the world. Clearly, there's going to have to be some collaboration and coordination on certification and rules. What kind of progress have you seen made on that front?
By no means we need that. Otherwise, we cannot move. So actually, but we are moving in this direction. And probably, if you want to give me one single sentence, we need to do it faster and better. So in Europe is advancing. There are some regulations already, like RED second and third. We have the certify, we have the certification of origin. There are different ways on certifying that. Not only at this level, but we also have the International Energy Agency, we have IRENA, We have this event where we are discussing this and we are learning from each other on what will be the best practices. But we really need to do this because we need to build this trust on each other so that we can move them through borders.
Romain, when you hear these kind of points on certification, what do you think about from the perspective of a hydrogen producer who's looking to fundamentally move molecules from one location to the next?
Yes, I think it's very interesting. In fact, I will give you a concrete example. We are a nitrogen producer in France. We are developing a project in east of France, in Moselle, in Carlin, and we will supply a German steelmaker, SHS, through a long-term contract that we have just signed, and we are very proud about it. And between those two locations, there are 24 kilometers. So how to deliver our hydrogen from France to Germany? By chance, the gas natural transport operator is currently developing a refurbishment of an existing gas natural pipe, and it will help to deliver our hydrogen to SHS. So this is a clear and concrete example of the role of the hydrogen infrastructure and the needs of those infrastructure to connect producer sites and consumption sites because it is not always possible to build a nitrogen facility on site close to the demand. And this is also an example that shows the benefits of leveraging the different advantages that some location may have in producing hydrogen. For sure, it is easier and cheaper to produce renewable hydrogen in countries like France where you have a low carbon electricity grid. So this enables us particularly to provide Germany with renewable hydrogen. That being said, clarity for sure is essential in terms of safety, you mentioned, in terms of environmental aspect. But it's also, clarity is also necessary for a developer like us, giving responsibility view on who will build the infrastructure, who will be responsible for any delays, and also clarity about the operating model of those infrastructure, which means how the tariff will be set, what would be the balancing mechanism for this kind of assets, all those kind of questions. And I think as developer, we need this kind of clarity in order at the end to provide hydrogen at the cheapest price as possible.
So on that topic of clarity, and I'll come back to you in a moment, Lionel, when you are making decisions to invest in new production capacity, how much certainty do you need on the rules of the game for putting it in the pipe to take it from point A to point B? Are you able to make investment decisions when there's still some uncertainty?
If there are some uncertainties that needs to be balanced between the two people around the table, and if the stakeholder that is responsible for the infrastructure is not there, it's a problem.
Yeah. Regulatory clarity being important. Lionel?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that we also just need also to consider the requirement of installations as per the need and step by step. So for instance, when you look in our case, with 7 stations across Europe, you cover all our needs. 7 stations. GCC, for our requirement business division, 5 to 8. US, 21 to start with, right? To go already to a certain scale. So with that in mind, you're looking at a progressive approach, which is not scary. And when you look at history and how we've developed railways and highways and everything, and airports, like it's a process. So as the gentleman in the previous panel was saying, we just need to start. And again, when you have a region like here, the GCC, when people are producing locally, and you can have off-take dream partners like us, right? You just need to start.
So I appreciate the message of you just need to start and you need to scale up and kind of build small and then go big. But if you are sitting on top of a massive export project with huge volumes and you need scale today, we need to find ways to get that built and to get that financed. Yeah. If you look at some of the initiatives that are being taken in Europe and in the UK, they're coming up with regulatory models to give investors confidence that they can put money into the pipes and eventually get it back out, even if there's some demand weakness and some pricing uncertainty in the early days. Roman, can you maybe tell us a little bit about what you're seeing happen in Europe on that front and whether or not you think it's working?
Yeah, from a European point of view, so the European Commission has proposed a framework about hydrogen infrastructure. It is called the fourth hydrogen and decarbonized gas package. It has been adopted in 2024. I think the overall framework is based on a regulated approach with a transitional phase up to 2032. What does it mean to have regulated infrastructure? It means that there will be a regulator responsible for setting tariff, for monitoring the profitability of the asset, for deciding investments, for settling potential disputes. So this is what it means. It also comes with the necessity to avoid a cross-subsidy between regulated activities and activities in competitions. What are the objectives of this framework? This is to give all the stakeholders visibility on the long run that should ease the financing of this infrastructure. We'll see how it turns out. This regulation is quite new. I give you previously an example of the pipe between France and Germany. This pipe has been developed before this regulation. So a more market approach is also possible for the development of hydrogen infrastructure.
So using regulation to take some of the burden away from first movers in the sector and give them some comfort that they're going to be able to, one, if you're building the infrastructure, get repaid for it, and two, if you're using the infrastructure, you're going to be able to do so at a reasonable price. When we look at some of the models that are coming into place in Europe, I understand that they're focusing heavily on pipelines and compression and effectively moving hydrogen molecules around. Elisa, do you think that there is increased need or some sort of need to also be focusing on ports and ammonia cracking facilities, and how do you think that should be treated?
I think that this sort of regulated asset-based concept could work with ports very well and could work with the cracking facilities. I mean, I think the benefit of it is you're essentially taking traditional project finance, which has 8 different parties, and it takes a year to paper the whole agreement. You're taking the offtake and the regulator and putting them into one, where you actually have some kind of guarantee, and that de-risks the project. So anything that we can do to de-risk the project is definitely helpful. And if I'm shipping in ammonia from Australia and I want it to be used as hydrogen in Europe somewhere, having the availability of cracking facilities is useful. But certainly the ports have to be accommodating for the shipment. Then I think, we have ammonia pipelines even in Europe already, and pipelines can be helpful, and having the government support that is going to always be helpful. But I think that there is a lot of advancement in cracking technology, and I think that we are no longer envisioning a world where Rotterdam has like a gigantic cracker and then it just goes into these hydrogen pipelines into the rest of the world. I think ammonia is easier to move, and then cracking has gotten really, really competitive and efficient. And you can have small crackers that people use on site, and that's a much easier way to do it than having a huge cracker that's not very efficient. So that involves more regulatory bodies, of course, when you're crossing over all these different country lines, but it's going to happen anyway.
And I'm going to come back to this theme about technology and the evolution of technology and what that means for the infrastructure build-out at the end, but that's a very important point that we want to keep track of. So looking at regulatory mechanisms to help deal with price and demand risk, this stuff is expensive. What role, Roman, do we think public finance should have in helping get some of this away, and what have you seen being successful so far to date in hydrogen sector projects and energy transition more broadly?
Again, from a European perspective, I think there is a toolbox of public support mechanisms that can leverage private investments. This toolbox is composed of instruments targeting the DevEx, targeting the CapEx, and even targeting the OpEx at a national or at the European scale. And for instance, two of our projects, of ESAF project, was among the winners of the innovation funds, which target the CapEx. There is also some reform of the state aid rules in Europe that are aiming to facilitate the new mechanism. Alongside of these mechanisms, there is also the European Investment Banks that has some tools for guarantee, for debt, for equity stake. So overall, I think the toolbox is quite complete. There is still needs to fix and to patch some tools. But these tools are not only for hydrogen infrastructure, it is for the whole ecosystem. For ESAF, so there is also some mechanism. And the toolbox will be completed for the ESAF with a double-side auction or contract for difference in order to facilitate offtake agreements. So I think the toolbox is here. It is now our role to use these tools and to move forward with our project.
Speaking of tools in the toolbox, Alicia, are there any other sources of funding that you'd be looking for if you needed to deploy huge sums of capital to get these networks going?
I mean, I would definitely look to ECAs if possible. So anything that I need, any kind of equipment or anything that I can source from a country that has a strong ECA partnership, I would definitely look to. So if I could get any of my equipment from Denmark, I have IFO on my side. That's a good source, not just of vendor financing and lowering the cost of the project, but also insurance. They give you insurance that can help with scaling, that can deal with issues that you actually can't buy insurance for. So ECAs can be really helpful, and I would definitely, if I was especially in Europe, look at that. And then, and of course, Asia also has ECAs. I mean, all the OECD countries have some kind of ECA policy, and I think they're extremely helpful. People really forget about them. And then, obviously, just standard having a good debt to equity ratio is very helpful, and grace periods.
Fair enough. Lionel, final point on liquidity and bringing money in. Mm-hmm. I mean, in your business, how have you seen public finance be helpful for kind of scaling up and getting things going?
So grants have been helpful to kickstart the project. Also the support and the partnership with the country in terms of, for instance, sovereign wealth fund have been are critical, in particular for the long term. And that also enable us to bring further partners that are strategic partners towards development of the technology and also of the market, and bring that on time in line with what we see time to market, but also time to technology. And so far it's been very helpful, and we thank, in our case, the French state for that, and European Union. And when we look forward, that's always what we look for, a partnership with countries that can help us bring the solution, but also the ecosystem to life.
Very good. So the stuff is big, it's challenging, it's expensive, and there's risk. We don't know who's going to use it, how much they're going to use it, what they want to pay for it. We've got all sorts of challenges today, but we also have a number of potential fixes for those challenges, which we've gone through: regulatory clarity, regulatory asset-based models to deal with the demand risk, and public finance. Lourdes, final question for you. We've been talking about a system as we are imagining it today based off of the technology that we understand today. If you had a kind of a scientific crystal ball and you could look forward 5, 10 years, how is the technology going to change in terms of production, cracking, or otherwise, that might completely change the infrastructure needs that we think we have?
Magically? So I think if I give you a classical answer, or the answer everyone will expect, I will say there are 3 main areas that will really make a change. One of them is improving the electrolyzers that we have right now for hydrogen production. Of course, if they are more flexible, cheaper, and more efficient, the whole thing will revolutionize the cost of producing green hydrogen today, and it will give confidence to the investors. So this is one. The other one that I think is easier is actually work a bit more on the hydrogen carriers. So if we have the investment or the moving the transportation through liquid organic hydrogen carriers or methanol or ammonia, this is easier because the ports and the ships and everything we have can be more readily available for that, provided we have the safety and environmental care that we mentioned before. So this is short-term, a way to do that. And the third one will be digitalization and monitoring. So we can improve the way hydrogen is delivered or its derivatives by doing this easily, because we can improve the sensors, we can improve the digitalization of the systems, we have predictive maintenance. So that will really de-risk the way we move from the technology side. But my bet is that what it will really revolutionize this is applying, in the right way, artificial intelligence. Why? Because then we can change the whole way in which we design the systems now. So we can now think of where is the hydrogen needed, where is the best place to produce this hydrogen, how do I transport it to where are the final off-takers. So I can use a much better way of optimizing this market, which is very important. And I can give you a few examples. Optimization of the way we do any of these things by using AI tools. The other one will be digital twins, so you will see when any of these parts of your infrastructures will fail. The other one, and we are using this already, and in our center we are using this very heavily, using AI for materials discovery, so that you will have better catalysts, better materials for the transportation, better alloys, etc. And of course, the final one is the planning of having everything integrated, correct? So you can have models that will allow you to see the best cost and also the less environmental impact on everything we do here. So I think AI, as I say, used in the proper way and in an integrated manner, can revolutionize all we do today in hydrogen.
Brilliant. We are out of time, so I'd like to thank the panelists very much, and we'll call it there. Thank you very much.
Panelists, now upstream supply alone will not build a hydrogen economy. As we were hearing, their long-term success depends on downstream industries committing to green hydrogen as a core part of their future. Our next panel will discuss which sectors are ready to scale first and what actions will turn these emerging markets into long-term anchors for the hydrogen economy. To moderate this conversation and introduce the panelists, we will be welcoming to the stage Karim El-Gendi, Executive Director of the Carbone Institute. But first, a brief video from our sponsors Fertiglobe to provide some context.
Fertiglobe has recently entered a new chapter of growth. As the world's leading exporter of essential nitrogen products and ammonia, with a young and low-cost, strategically positioned production platform, Fertiglobe's Grow 2030 strategy is a roadmap to become a $1 billion plus EBITDA company by 2030 and a fully integrated global downstream nitrogen champion. Our growth is driven by 4 strategic pillars: achieving first quartile manufacturing and cost excellence, maximize netbacks and increase customer proximity, Expand nitrogen product portfolio to capture more value. Pursue a disciplined approach to low-carbon ammonia growth. With the strategic support of our majority shareholder ADNOC, its strong financial backing, vote of confidence and support to optimize costs. We are able to warehouse and incubate promising projects, thereby opening new horizons for disciplined growth. We are strongly positioned for the energy transition and fully committed to creating long-term sustainable value for all our stakeholders.
Wir starten schon mit dem Defizit. So.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, Excellencies. My name is Karim El-Gandhi. I'm the Executive Director of the Carbon Institute, the first think tank on climate and energy in the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you for joining what I believe would be the most critical conversation on green hydrogen here at this summit. And the reason it is critical is because it resolves this fundamental issue that green hydrogen faces, which is basically downstream demand. Is there a downstream demand that keeps up with the ambitions of production that we are hearing on green hydrogen? Can that happen? Can it happen at the scale, the timeline, at the cost that the producers are promising us or are planning for? And to discuss this, we have a wonderful set of panelists who can answer some of the critical questions that we have. Will ammonia remain the main off-taker? Would ammonia be the one primary source of off-taking for green hydrogen across the region and beyond? Will ESF and e-methanol, will they grow? Will they scale at the speed that we need to see? Will green iron ever make a breakthrough and become a traded commodity? And will the region capture that share of green iron that it could potentially do? And will heavy truck industry specifically get over the transportation challenge of infrastructure first or demand first, a chicken and egg kind of conundrum that we are currently facing? So today we are discussing many of these things with those who are investing and building some of those systems within the industry itself. We need to understand which sectors specifically can scale and can develop within the next 2, 3, 5 years, and which ones are really stories for perhaps the 2030s. And we also need to understand what policy levers will we need to take action in order to convert what is otherwise ambitions into actual operating assets. So without further ado, let me introduce our distinguished panelists. Dr. Sebastian Legendorf, who is founder and CEO of Meranti Green Steel, right here on my left. Dr. Legendorf brings 15 years of experience of steel industry management experience, previously serving as CEO and board member of JFE Meranti. Prior experience includes strategy consulting at Bain & Company, as well as the World Bank. We also have Dr. Jürgen Reckberger, who is VP of Hydrogen and Energy, Group VP at AVL. Jürgen oversees AVL's Global Hydrogen and Energy Business Unit, which spans fuel cells for transportation and power generation, as well as electrolyzer technologies. Martijn van Koten, who's executive board member at OMV. Martijn is a member of OMV's board as well, and he's responsible for fuels and feedstock division. He's also the interim head of chemicals. OMV specifically are of note because they are partnering currently with Masdar on green hydrogen, specifically in Austria, which is notable given that Masdar are hosting us here. He was also previously an executive board member at Borealis, and he had held senior manufacturing roles at Shell across Europe, Asia, and the Americans. Next is Dr. Manfred Schuckert, who is VP of International Hydrogen Strategy at Daimler Truck, he leads Daimler Truck's regulatory strategy development and international hydrogen strategy, includes coordination of liquid hydrogen refueling networks across Europe, the expansion of this. He also oversees global heavy-duty greenhouse gas regulations across EU and China. Next, we have Niels van Buren, Executive Vice President of Methanol and Business Development at Power2X. Power2X is a Dutch developer and operator of large-scale hydrogen, e-methanol, and SAF, sustainable aviation fuel. He is currently developing, not he personally, but Power2X is currently developing Europe's largest eSAF project in Rotterdam, which will import nearly 1 million tons of sustainable methanol from globally, including the MENA region. And last but not least is Haroon Rahmatullah, who is the Chief Commercial and Growth Officer of Fertiglobe, that you just saw the introduction to. Fertiglobe is the largest seaborne exporter of urea and ammonia. Previously, Haroon was a managing director at Barclays and headed European chemicals investment banking at Jefferies. Extensive experience across nitrogen, potash, phosphates, and crop chemicals. So without further ado, I would like to go straight into the points. We only have 30 minutes, so I will start with a subject that is perhaps close to my heart, which is green iron and green steel, and I will start right here on my left with Sebastian. Sebastian, given that MENA region specifically currently has about 45%, half of the global DRI potential. It has the infrastructure, it's ready to retrofit much more than anyone else in the world. What do you think could genuinely make this happen in the next 5 years as opposed to the next 10 years, 15 years? What would catalyze the transition of natural gas DRI, which the region excels on, has huge potential for, to happen now rather than later?
Thanks, Karim, and good afternoon, everyone. I think, very briefly, for those who are not familiar of you with the steel industry, before we make steel, we need to make iron. Iron is basically the process where you remove the oxygen from the ferrum. And the conditions here in the region are already ideal. There's a process that we're applying in our project in Oman, which is called direct reduced iron process, where we can use either gas, natural gas, or hydrogen to remove the oxygen from the iron. And both natural gas and green hydrogen are very competitive here. So in that sense, I think we don't have to wait for anything else. I think these are the best conditions in the world. So we believe that a lot of the decarbonized iron and steel supply chains will lead through this region. We see a lot of investments, like we are part of a mega hub where we are sharing infrastructure with other projects. And I think now it's just about implementing these projects with focus, making sure that we have delivery risks addressed that are materializing in other projects in the world. And we are very confident that by 2029 we will have our project ready. We start with a step-by-step approach in line with the energy transition plan in Oman. So we will not go for full hydrogen usage in the beginning. We will use 88% of gas, 12% of hydrogen, and then we will increase gas over time so that we are growing in line, let's say, with economic conditions, CO2 prices, and so forth. So we are very confident, and we believe that the economic conditions in this region are already there.
Great. I mean, it's great to see that your project Oman is very refreshing, is going ahead as planned. Would you say that the carbon border adjustment mechanism, which only came into effect about 15 days ago, would it help change your calculations, accelerate any of this?
So the CBAM mechanism, of course, is part of, let's say, the demand push that we're seeing, but it's not just CBAM alone. Now we're seeing ETS-type systems, CO2 taxes across the world. So I think CBAM was a catalyst, but it's no longer the only mechanism in the world. So we see that happening across regions, even in Southeast Asia, where we're focusing on steel making. We see Singapore with a carbon tax, we see Thailand, we see Indonesia with carbon taxes. So these are, of course, demand contributors, but we're also seeing pull from the demand side, automotive, for example, who will then market a green product to their end customers. So I think it's CBAM as one part of the equation, but not the only one.
Great, thank you. Now, let me jump to Martijn, and a question more about chemicals. What would you say amongst the main chemicals, so synthetic fuels, ammonia, and methanol, which ones do you think are more credible, more short-term, can accelerate faster, and which ones are perhaps something for later?
Yeah, thank you for having me as well, Karim. So I think in terms of driving downstream demand, we see fuels and chemicals. We have 4 electrolyzers, 1 in operation, 3 we're building, the biggest one with Masdar together. And they're all aiming to capitalize on fuels and chemicals demand. So if I take the example in Vienna, where we're building the 140 megawatts, it makes the green hydrogen makes the value of the fossil fuels higher. It makes the value of the biofuels higher. It reduces the ETS1 emissions, but also very important, we're doing chemical recycling, and you need to hydrogenate those products. So for our chemical recycled ethylene and propylene, it's also a very good value boost. And then the 5th one is to look at e-fuels. And the route we have chosen in e-fuels, and we're doing our own proprietary technology development, is methanol. So that answers also your question there. We think there the methanol is a very good intermediate, because we can produce it locally, but we can also import it. And then from there make both sustainable aviation fuel as well as e-ethylene and e-propylene. And we see there's synergy there. And if you look at our facilities in Vienna, we have a refinery and we have an ethane cracker, and Borealis operates, Future Barossa International with XRG together, operates polyethylene, polypropylene. And that really works already. It's a commercial business case. It's not living from subsidies. It lives from the customers, which it should. And I see that opportunity then, for instance, also here, right? We have here also Barouche chemical complex. You have a refinery. You could see at the nexus there also that type of plants that make fuels and make chemicals be commercial.
Great.
And I say, we're looking at that.
Let me pick Neil's brain on this. Do you agree with Martijn's assessment? Do you think this is the sequence that we're likely to see specifically in this region?
No, very much so. For us, there's no other answer than how we see in terms of short-term demand signal. We think aviation is the big one. There's clear regulatory targets. They have been in the EU transferred into law. The fines for non-compliance are pretty punitive. This morning I did a quick calculation. If Emirates, for example, would not comply with the return flight from Amsterdam into Dubai, that would cost them roughly 4 million a year. So that's only one destination in Europe. Well, you can do the math. So we clearly see aviation fuel as a first one, methanol into SAF. But the beauty of methanol is indeed you can ultimately, short-term, long-term, address a plethora of end users. So we very much see also the chemical space and possibly some others. But e-propylene, e-ethylene, e-butylene as an octane booster, all of that is possible. We see aviation as the first one, possibly shipping the second, chemicals very big, but maybe somewhat longer term.
Excellent. Let me go to Haroon on that. So drilling down a little bit more on ammonia, and I think your experience could be very instructive in that regard. And perhaps I'll also come back to Jürgen after that. Do you think ammonia could survive on fertilizers alone, or does it also need shipping? What distinguishes these two pathways in terms of offtake?
You know, when you see our video, the first thought that I had was it's all about fertilizers there. And I said we need to change that video to broaden out the ammonia application beyond just fertilizers. The challenge on the fertilizer side of things is affordability. And you've seen what's happening basically in Europe. There's some noise around CBAM as well a few days ago, driven by farmer affordability concerns. So, you know, I think my view is that, look, ammonia has a lot of advantages in terms of being that efficient, effective hydrogen carrier, in terms of some of the investments that are already in place and the know-how. But we've got to be selective in terms of where that ammonia goes. So as I think about it, we have our green ammonia project. This is a 100 megawatt electrolyzer project that will probably FID sometime in the first half of this year. We benefited from sort of that H2 Global award, so that helped de-risk a lot of it. And that then gave us a little bit of flexibility in terms of some of the end markets where we look to ship that ammonia beyond the H2 global period. And what we're seeing is, I think on the agriculture side, back to that point, probably take a little bit more time, but on the chemicals side of things, I was just having a discussion with a European, chemical user, and honestly I was a bit surprised and positively surprised that despite all of this noise, they're very, very focused on that long-term view and the medium to long-term view, and the case is still there. I mean, with ETS ramping up and those allowances and the cost of those allowances, they're quite high. I do think that there is a use case on the chemicals and the industrial side as well.
Wonderful. Jürgen, would you like to come in on this?
Yeah, happy to do so. So just let me explain in one sentence what AVL is doing, because that's not because we are not developing these big projects and selling molecules. AVL is acting in the background as a technology company. So we are developing all the technologies we are talking about. In this case, for shipping, for example, large engines for ship propulsion, or even fuel cell propulsion for ships. But we are developing, for example, at the moment with 10 global electrolyzer company, next generation electrolyzers to push the efficiency. And coming back to the question of ammonia, on the shipping side, there was a little bit of hype a few years ago on ammonia, but we have learned that there are two things which need to be solved, right? First, the propulsion system need to work on ammonia. That's not really happening today. So the combustion engines in the lab already run, but there is no start of production yet of these engines. And even in the last years, a bigger concern is on safety. So honestly speaking, I do not see ammonia as a ship propulsion fuel in the next years. This will take some time. So we have to stick for the moment, I think, as an alternative fuel to methanol. On the ship investments, we see actually mostly going now into conventional diesel, into marine oil, into LNG, and a little bit of methanol. But methanol is the way to go for marine for the next years. Long term, ammonia is super exciting because it could be cheaper than methanol.
Wonderful. Please.
Yeah, maybe a quick one.
Niels and then Martijn.
Sorry. Maybe a quick one. Arun mentioned affordability. Of course, that's a very big topic. In a former life, renewables, we always talked about the energy trilemma, sustainability, affordability, security of supply. This might be only a European kind of perspective, but the security of supply thing also recently is a very big topic in Europe for chemicals, for fuels. So also there, let's call it green molecules and blue molecules can play a big role. That security of supply topic has not been in the discussion since or for a long time, but for the last year, security of supply is a big topic.
Yep. I want to very quickly add, Karim, that for us the attraction in methanol is that also the sustainable carbon molecule is transported. Right, so it is not only about having green hydrogen, but we also need the carbons for the chemicals, for the fuels. And that comes in one package with the methanol. And that's why I think for my value chain, methanol is the way to look at. So that was the evaluation we did.
Yeah. No, biogenic CO2 is almost like this scarce resource. We come, I think, later to co-location. Let's park that then for a moment, because there's a sequence or priority of, let's call it co-located assets. Biogenic CO2 is a big one. I think in the Emirates, it's more about industrial CO2. That is possible also to basically make methanol for Europe. But then there's a couple of considerations. It's only possible until 2041. And Emirates also needs to have an equivalent EU ETS CO2 ticketing system. And as long as those two requirements are met, industrial CO2 can also play a big role in the methanol value chain.
Great. Let me shift gear a little bit and go to Manfred and ask you a little bit about something that perhaps is less abstract to most of us, which is transportation. And there's this catch-22 within transportation. Do you build the infrastructure first, or do you manufacture the vehicles that create that demand for hydrogen-powered trucks in the first place? Could you explain a little bit what is the level of investment in infrastructure that is needed for manufacturers to deliver on the trucking that is required? And does it need a crutch? For example, does it need help from steel or chemicals for hydrogen to scale up fast enough, the infrastructure to develop fast enough to help you?
Yeah, that's a little bit much, so to say. But let me start a little bit to describe the dimension, what we have ahead of us. First of all, we have a regulatory target in place in Europe 2030 it was 43%, and in 2040 already was 90%. Right now, we have roughly about 6 to 7 million trucks running in Europe every day. And if you describe let's say the fuel consumption, the diesel consumption, it's about 60 million tons of diesel every year. And if you think of, let's say, half of the distance will be made by battery trucks in 2040, 2050, then the other half needs to be done more or less through hydrogen. And that describes the dimension. That means roughly about the demand would be 10 million tons of hydrogen every year consumed by those trucks. So whether it's 10 or 8 million, doesn't matter. It's a huge dimension which we have ahead of us just in the next more or less 2 decades. And this describes, let's say, the challenge. In the last weeks and months, we were sitting together, we as the car and truck industry, to start discussions on how we can work together in order to provide enough hydrogen refueling stations. But what turned out really is the dimension of the hydrogen supply, to get it affordable, and get it robust, and get the supply system in place. And through lots of discussions and calculations, we came back again to that what we in Daimler already concluded years ago, that the best way would be liquid hydrogen, to distribute, to refuel, and also, of course, to store, at least on the truck side. On passenger car side, it's different. But the supply system would be based on liquid hydrogen. So, and if you then continue, and we are here in Middle East, in UAE, and you make the discussions about where is the cheapest place to produce all that hydrogen, then you come back and you see it's definitely the place where electricity is the cheapest. And that's why we are together with other industry leaders in a discussion to build up a supply system based on liquid hydrogen. A week ago, Kawasaki announced that they will build a ship with, let's say, a commercial ship. Not that dimension we assume will be the final one, but this dimension already gives us a very good basis to distribute and to transport then liquid hydrogen. So that's it. It's billions, to be honest. And this brings us to the main problem right now we have. We have solved, I think the technology on the vehicle side will be done. We have now a refueling station technology which is really cheap, affordable, robust. The thing what is missing is really the supply system on the liquid hydrogen side. So large-scale liquefaction plants as well as large-scale supply for this liquefaction. And what the vehicle industry can't do right now is really to provide a commitment over 20 years of demand on hydrogen. Yeah, this is beyond our capabilities, and that's where we need the governments to step in, like they did on the photovoltaic side. Yeah, so when we started in Germany with our PVs, the consumers, or let's say the ones who built those plants, they got a 20 years commitment by the government. And something similar, the Japanese have a CFD system in place. Something similar we need also on our side.
Excellent. So on that point, let me ask perhaps all of you, and I'll start with Sebastian here. What exactly would you like the government to do? Would you like the government to step in and support these technologies that perhaps are not fully ready? Is that more critical? Or is it more critical to provide policy certainty and more visibility for the future? Perhaps, Sebastian, you could... I think in your specific industry.
I think in our industry, I would say it's the latter. I think the most important to make these projects bankable and feasible is the certainty of the framework.
Right.
So I think, for example, we take CBAM, and I mentioned it's part of the equation, not the only one, but it has an impact. So I think planning certainty is very critical. And I think for governments kind of to stick to the route, at least in an 80-20 way, without major shifts, makes these projects, of course, much more certain, much more bankable. I think in terms of subsidies, I personally think subsidies can be actually an instrument that can be quite dangerous, because I think often subsidies address a capex question without looking at opex. So in our industry, we see a lot of iron projects that were subsidized in Europe without the conditions being in place. So hydrogen is expensive. Natural gas is often being transported via LNG. So while the capex is being addressed with subsidies, the OPEX will be hugely challenging. The employment is in Europe not necessarily sitting upstream, it's sitting downstream. So we think it's much better actually to create the best and most competitive iron projects upstream, to use then the HBI, as you mentioned, as a traded product, and to bring that into Europe to make sure that the supply chain in Europe is competitive. Because if the inputs are competitive, there's a lot of scrap available that can also play a big role in the iron and steel industry in Europe. Then the downstream competitiveness will be ensured as well. And we believe it is very important to fully understand the supply chains that will be built for the future and that will be the most competitive in the future.
Great.
So we think subsidies...
Let me bring other industries in. We only have 5 minutes. Let me bring other industries. Do we all agree on this notion that it is policy certainty, a more cohesive framework, more than supporting some technologies?
Well, it's basically getting a molecule across the whole value chain to the end customer. I think scaling, you need two things: technology readiness, a competitive end product, and then bankability, which is also really important. In the end, I think we very much believe more pull than push. But the other bit is about crossing the valley of DevEx, as we call it. A lot of these projects can achieve bankability and FID, but it's the DevEx bit for these big capital projects that sometimes pose a challenge. So probably support at the end of the value chain to create an even playing field, but then also helping, let's call it, the first projects to cross this valley of DevEx. Otherwise, it's only the very big companies that can basically play this game. And we need also the entrepreneurial spirit of the smaller parties to ultimately choose the right technologies. I think governments, it depends also where you are, but in Europe I think it's not governments that need to choose the technology, let that do the market, but provide the right incentive at the end of the value chain to provide the pool, and then the market will solve it with some bumps and hurdles, but that's a bit our view.
Great. Jürgen?
Yeah. My colleagues, of course, are right, on a practical way, but theoretically there would be another solution which would be quicker, right? But that's the complicated one, where governments need to talk to each other to have a harmonized global CO2 tax. That would solve all our problems, right? Climate change would be solved in 20 years. So that would be the ideal solution, and I think we should not give up on that. Of course, it's difficult, right? But we need to start from somewhere. For example, why in this geopolitical situation we are living right now, where basically the United States went out of this whole game, why not Europe moving into a climate club with China? With taxes around or whatever, right? We need to start from somewhere, but the final solution of the problem we are facing is a CO2 tax.
Great. Okay. In one sentence, what is the single most action in your industry that would close the gap between hydrogen and your specific industry? Can we start with Haroon?
I think just building on the last theme, stop the flip-flopping on the regulation side and just be clear.
That's one sentence. Niels?
Well, yeah, sorry, it's going to be a repeat. Stable and transparent regulation that people can plan and invest on.
Great.
Affordable hydrogen.
Great.
I'm also going for stable regulation and level playing.
Regulations, there's a lot of regulation. I don't know if governments are listening. There's a lot of regulation and policy.
You need to let the economy blossom itself, right? So you have a stable playing field, and then the entrepreneurs will do it.
Excellent. And Jürgen?
Difficult for me, we are in 10 industries, but one which is true for all 10, move technologies forward.
In our case, I would say it's transition. So build hydrogen into our process step by step and not all at once.
Okay, so more infrastructure development. Great. Okay, so in the last minute and a half, if you have any closing statements, I think I will start with Sebastian. If you could give us 20 seconds closing statement of, or we could move on to the next person. Please go ahead.
So I think from our side, what we're seeing is a big reshuffling actually of supply chains. I think to close, I would say this region will play a very significant role. We're very happy to be here. We love to do the work in Oman. What we see as a big support factor is actually the alignment of policies, everybody working together, and that makes these projects much more deliverable, implementable. So
thank you.
We look forward.
Thank you, Jürgen. 20 seconds.
final statement from my side is there's still a lot of potential in technology, right? Let's push technology. There's a lot of innovation coming. We can dramatically improve the efficiency of all these pathways we are talking about. So the next 3-4 years, there will be more technologies. We are doing, for example, green steel electrolyzers at the moment with up to 90% efficiency. They will help a lot to improve the business case in 3-4 years from now.
Yeah, I would say it's all about customers actually for me now. So we've gotten to the point that there are a lot of pots on the fire, but now to really kind of pull it off, it's focus on the customer. Where can we make money? And as said, we have now 4 commercial green hydrogen projects, and we're looking for the next one, but it has to be double-digit return, in my view. And then you can reinvest also.
Thank you, Martijn.
Besides all the battery noise we see today, hydrogen trucks will come, hydrogen buses will come, and we will deliver the first units out of serious production by the end of this year. It's a smaller series, but all the other manufacturers are also working on hydrogen trucks, so it's really important that this application will come with hydrogen. But for that, we really need then, around the end of this decade, enough and affordable hydrogen at those stations where we will refuel those trucks.
Yeah. Can I say very quickly, customer, right? So we're making a lot of hydrogen production for industry, but we have 1,700 petrol stations. We have big commercial road transport segments. The moment these truckers want hydrogen, I'm ready. And that's how the customer then pulls it through.
Great. And Neil?
Yeah, I see we're plus 50, so I'll make this short. So focusing on our biggest ESAF project in Europe, the largest. At the back end, customers, the aviation suppliers, they're coming around, so we are engaging them on 10-year long fuel contracts. But now we also need to source the 1 million tons of methanol on an annual basis. So for me at this moment, it's very much about cooperating with the countries that can supply that. I think Emirates is one of them. So it's very much about international cooperation, international alignment of regulation, and then creating these green corridors. This might be a bit of a European perspective, but these green corridors towards Europe.
Certainly a Middle Eastern perspective, perhaps given the geography, so perhaps Haroon could note to that.
You know, agree with everything that's been said, but wanted to call out the region, and I think the region here has a number of positive attributes in terms of ability to get things done, especially with strong leadership. My view is things move much quicker over here than in any part of the world, and the strong will and backing to support initiatives that make sense. So I think the UAE and other countries in this region are uniquely positioned to be an effective supplier. Yeah.
Thank you, Haroon. I believe we're just 2 minutes above the time, so please join me in thanking the wonderful panelists for their great insights and for being perfectly on time. And thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Karim and the panelists for another fascinating discussion there. And few sectors face the decarbonisation challenge as acutely as a sector we've already spoken about this afternoon, but we're going to revisit in depth now. Global shipping. The industry is entering a decisive decade as new regulations and customer pressure accelerate the shift towards low carbon fuels. Our next and final dialogue for the afternoon examines what a realistic fuel mix for the 2030s actually looks like, and to what extent hydrogen-derived options can help reshape the sector. Now, please join me in welcoming to the stage a lady you've already seen on a panel here this afternoon, and she was talking about shipping in that. Alicia Eastman, Managing Director at APC Investors. Thank you.
Oh, welcome everyone. If you were here an hour ago, you saw me on another panel. This one is the future fuel of shipping. I think we all know that global shipping is entering a decisive decade as new regulations and customer pressure accelerate the shift towards low carbon fuels. And we would really like to get, by the end of our 25 minutes, what a realistic fuel mix will look like in 2030s, and how far can hydrogen-derived options like methanol, ammonia, liquid hydrogen reshape the industry. So first I'll introduce our illustrious panel here. We have Nicolas Pirot. He is the CEO of Air Liquide, Africa, Middle East, Central, and South Asia. And next we have Takeo-san, Takeo Akamatsu. He's the General Manager of Green Innovation Business Unit, Plant, Project, Marine, and Aerospace at Itoshu. Next we have the hardest name. We have Mark Gellenkirchen, and he's the Vice President of Business Development Middle East at Advario, Star Energy. And we also have Anton Martinez Rodriguez. He is the CEO of Enagas Renovables. And finally, we have Jens Walsner, Infrastructure Managing Director at Prime Capital. So we're going to discuss a little bit of what kind of shipping fuels are available and what this team thinks about them. And maybe we'll start first with Nicolas. Could you give us some idea of how methanol, ammonia, liquid hydrogen, how do they compare in terms of scalability, safety, cost? How would you compare these different options for shipping?
Thank you, Alicia. Hello, everyone. Very happy, very honored to be here again after last year's successful events, and always good to share some insight from a company, Air Liquide, which is not a true energy company, but since we are involved with our molecules from hydrogen to ammonia to methanol and others, into the energy players and the transporters in general, I'm always happy to share our own experience. I was for many years in Asia. I'm now in this region, fantastic region, very diverse. And when I look at these three molecules you mentioned, from my perspective, I think it's just too early to put all my bets on one of them, if I can answer very shortly. If you look just at hydrogen itself, we see some part of it in gas, high pressure, because it's light, especially for planes or for mobility, heavy trucks. And liquid hydrogen for shipping is part of the equation. But like some of these molecules compared to traditional fuel, when you save on CO2 emission and others, of course you lose on density, which means the point is not only the cost and the supply chain for this type of new fuel of tomorrow, for the shipping lines, but when you look at shipping lines is whether you are going to reschedule those ships, right? How far can they go? When should they refill? Depending on ammonia, methanol, hydrogen. And to me, because I supply industrial people like petrochemical and steel and electronics, for us, hydrogen plays in energy, for example, found its place when you have links between fuel, could be ships or plane or trucks, and industry. So to me, and it's very key here in Abu Dhabi or in the Middle East, is when you have a port next to an industrial zone, you can really scale some of these molecules much better. Because if you have usage with ADNOC, with some steel makers next to the port, then you can start to bet on economy of scale or better technology on this molecule. And then, of course, ammonia is more chemical than hydrogen somehow. So you have different type of risk and challenges compared to methanol and hydrogen. Methanol, we see it moving because we have more and more technologies, even Air Liquide, on e-methanol, you know, depending on type of CO2 you could bring with hydrogen to make methanol. So I still believe there will be a path there with methanol, but ammonia is probably more ready at the moment, and I will let my peers mention that better than myself. But I'm remaining quite agnostic between the three of them today, if I may say.
Okay, thank you. I guess the next question I'm going to ask Takeo. What infrastructure gaps do you think we have for ports and fuel suppliers? And which ones do we need to address first?
Okay, if talk about the infrastructure readiness for the multi fuel, so we need, of course, we need an alternative fuel vessel. That is a starting point. So if talk about like ammonia, methanol, and so methanol case, we have a vessel and we have a engine, and but unfortunately still the supply side, production is not ready yet, so at the scale. So that's why that is an issue. But in case of ammonia, still we're waiting for engine and vessel. So we're happy to say this year, 2026, we have a number of the vessels with ammonia engine is coming to the sea. So if assuming that positive result of demonstration, and we can say engine vessel for ammonia is ready. And the question is infrastructure. And we have an existing tank for ammonia, like at various people. And but we don't have ammonia bunker barge. So Itochu ordered the world first bunker barge, delivering the 27. So therefore, we can say 27, 28, we have a certain number of bunker barge in the market. Then next bottleneck would be a tank. So today we have a tank at for existing market. But if we have increasing of demand, then we need the onshore tankage worldwide. So that's why demand first, then we have to prepare the infrastructure, bunker barge, floating tank, onshore tank. Then last bottleneck seems to be a production.
Okay, understood. Well, actually, Mark, I'm going to ask you both questions. I'd love to hear your viewpoints on what you think are the outstanding characteristics, either positive or negative, about the various options for shipping, sort of what Nicolas said, or your version, and then also what kind of infrastructure blocks are there for these items, these fuels?
Let me first start with an example, and I'm going to ask a question to the panelists here, just to make it a bit more alive. So I won't ask you, because you're far away and I can't see you. How many of these shirts fit in a container?
You asking me?
Don't know.
I used to ask the guy with
I'm
those
after
shirts.
the three gentlemen. 4. How many shirts fit in a container in a TEU?
100,000.
20,000.
20,000.
Oh.
Approximately. How many containers fit on a very large container vessel? 20,000.
Yeah.
How many shirts are on a container vessel?
10,000.
If it's only loaded with shirts? 20,000 times 20,000 is 400 million. So I think it's very interesting to understand, also for the audience, if you transport these shirts from Shanghai to Rotterdam with methanol or ammonia instead of heavy fuel, the cost per shirt will be around $1 extra.
Yeah.
So that cost is very minimal. The cost for the shipping line, though, is a few million. I think that is something that we always have to keep in mind. It is a small amount for the end consumer, it's a large amount for the parties in the middle. And I think that is one of the reasons why it's all going so slow. Another thing, talking about infrastructure, is that I think we should all use the infrastructure that we have currently available, and I totally agree with you. We have tanks that carry gray ammonia. If it tomorrow carries green ammonia, we do not see the difference.
Yeah.
It's the same infrastructure. We have these tanks in ports. They can bunker a ship tomorrow. So we have to make sure that we use the infrastructure and the supply chain that is already currently available for blue or gray products. And we should not shy away of even mixing the products. Because even if you put gray and green and blue and yellow and black and brown ammonia in the same tank, we won't notice. We can use it and it becomes cheaper for everyone. But please always remember, it costs nothing to transport it in an environmental friendly way.
I think it's $1 for a pair of jeans too. So really not a lot for
not $1 for a pair of jeans. It will be 3 cents or 4 cents.
Well, it depends on the jeans. Well, great. Actually, my next question, really like to ask Anton. How do you think shipping companies are balancing near-term compliance with longer-term fuel? Just taking bets on fuels.
Okay, thank you very much. And first of all, thanks the organization to inviting Agar Renovable to this outstanding event. It's my first time and it's very well organized. In terms of how the ship company could do, I believe they have to move in 3 directions. First of all, take the quick wins of the efficiency and the digital optimization. So that in the end, the target is to reduce the green hydrogen, the gas house emissions, and not to use one or other technology. So that to get in the objective, first thing, go to the easiest to get targets. Second, hydrogen derivatives. We strongly believe that they are going to have a market in the medium and long term, but in the short term, take advantage of existing biofuels that also help to decrease this carbon footprint. For instance, bio-LNG. And then, as Mark has mentioned, which kind of fuels can they start to use first? The one in which the infrastructure is available. The locking and start a new energy vector is a very, I would say, complicated task. If at the same time you need to develop a completely new infrastructure, for instance, like liquid hydrogen, the challenge is even better. So let's start for the things that are easy to get, and then let the technology to evolve in order to see which are the technologies that better suit the customer needs.
Great, thank you. And I think, Jens, we'll move on to another topic. What role do you think that the regulation will play in accelerating adoption, regulation versus customer demand?
Thank you very much for the question, and also thank you very much for being on the panel here. I think clearly customer demand is needed in order to drive something. However, what we are seeing in the market is there is a very limited, so to say, voluntary demand by off-takers. And I'm not expecting that to change, also in particular on the maritime side after the unfortunate decision earlier or towards the end of last year by IMO to postpone a decision on the IMO regulation. I think at the very end, the demand can only be created via clear and harsh regulatory matters. At the very end, the cost for the end customer are not that excessive, as Mark rightly pointed out. However, I have difficulties in seeing that the end customer is really, driving that demand without having a clear regulatory incentive in order to do so. So I think that is clearly what will be driving, and it's unfortunately not the demand, the voluntary demand only.
So you see regulatory demand essentially more as guidelines or laws versus subsidies or taxes. I mean, do you think that a carbon tax is necessary to get this rolling?
I think initially there is a lot of different types of support being needed for projects to be realized. Clearly, the end products are otherwise, in the current market environment, too expensive to utilize and can't compete with other fossil alternatives. So initially, a combination in order to get the thing rolling. But I think what is clearly in the long run important is to have the regulatory framework and to have that, staying in place despite potential economic turmoils, which will clearly we'll all be facing, until the industry is getting matured enough and the costs of the end products are declining.
Interesting. I'd actually love to ask the whole panel a question about the mix of fuels that we actually expect to be used in 2030. I mean, considering all of your different vantage points and all of the different things that you focus on, what do you think we'll be talking about? And I'd like to consider the regulatory pathways, the demand. It's global, so it's different everywhere. But what do you think we'll be working with in terms of the mix for shipping fuel?
Well, I think, like I said earlier, it will probably depend first on each location of the world. As a European, and when I was in Europe, you can rely a lot on regulation, right? To incentivize people, or ETS, to push people to decarbonize or to push the filling system to be decarbonized. When I was in China, it was very different. It doesn't work with so much subsidies or so much regulation initially, and actually I saw it going much faster. If I take the mobility for trucks or heavy vehicles or buses, in my 4 years in China, I saw it coming much faster than in Europe, because in Europe it was mostly based on some specific pilots, small towns, small ports, and a closed system, where in China they really incentivize people differently in a more competitive manner to bring technology at scale on the market and to survive on the market. So it's a bit counterintuitive that the Chinese ecosystem is more competitive and capitalistic, but it is. And if you look at other parts of the world, sometimes it's even more different. So what we see today, if you're not speaking about shipping fuel, you see big differences of ecosystem. You see places that still use coal, like South Africa or China, but find a way to decarbonize their industry in other ways, right? In the Middle East, that's what most of the countries and the big oil companies are doing. They know hydrocarbons will remain part of the energy of the future somehow. And at the same time, and I think Patrick Pouyanné said that during the opening ceremony, they also bet on renewable powers, nuclear power, like here in the Emirates. So it's very much pragmatic here, agnostic here, and I see the Middle East again leveraging on their industry, big oil companies, to be able to bring to the ships and the ports, you know, some cleaner energy for the future. Now the real problematic we have for shipping fuel is what I mentioned before, is when they go across the world from the US to China to the Middle East to Europe, if they cannot find the same cost and the same type of technology in Rotterdam or on the West Coast or in Shanghai port, it's going to be an issue. And that's going to be probably coming from the shipping large companies. That's what we see today, the Maersk and the CMS CGM, for them to be the one balancing between the different ports of the world, a little bit like airports and planes are trying to do with SAF at the moment. So some companies in South Africa, like Sasol, are pushing on SAF, but you can't do it only in one airport and not the other. So I think for big ports and big shipping lines, that may happen, mostly from container line. So it's not really answering in details your question, because I don't think, as of today, I can answer that question.
Yeah, at the beginning, you did make it clear that you were agnostic, but I was hoping to turn you to some kind of decision. I'm going to go on Mark, see if Mark has an idea of what the fuel mix will be. Just making a bet here.
Slightly difficult to talk about the future. So I think for nearshore and short sea shipping, we see an uptake on electrical vessels, for sure. Mm-hmm. We still see the old vessels sailing around on the old fuel. But what I do hope is that we'll see quite a lot of vessels that sail, for instance, 10% or 20% of the distance on methanol as a dual fuel ship, that then can declare 20% of the cargo as green transported, and then you have to pay 1 cent extra for your shirt to actually pay for that. So I hope that there will be a slow turn, and I do see LNG is coming for sure, or it's there. And then I think methanol will be the next one, and then hopefully also the first ships on ammonia will be seeing the light. And you know, maybe there's another carrier found of hydrogen by that time. You never know.
Do you see any issue with methanol in terms of biogenic CO2? Sourcing that and the competition between methanol and, say, ESAF? I mean, just cross-sector competition for the same biogenic CO2. Is this something you consider in your projections?
We're hoping that we can use non-biogenic CO2 a bit longer. So if you could use that until 2050, I think you have enough horizon to actually invest. And then let's be honest, if you now capture CO2 from a gas-powered electricity plant here in Abu Dhabi, and you use that to make methanol that you then use in the shipping, you at least saved half of the CO2. Mm-hmm. Which is not as good as saving it all, but it's far better than saving nothing.
Sure.
So make that horizon a bit longer, and there will be room to invest.
Same arguments for co-firing and lots of other applications.
Everything, yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of, Takeo-san, what do you think in terms of shipping fuels in the 2030s? But I'm shooting now for like a percentage of liquid hydrogen, ammonia, methanol, biofuels.
Okay, so we have to say, depending upon the vessel type and depending upon the trading pattern. And I have to say, liquid hydrogen, no chance at the time of 2030s because difficulty for fuel tank. Engine okay, but the fuel tank difficult. So then we just focus on the methanol and ammonia. So today, many methanol vessels, but they are facing difficulty to secure proper procurement of fuel. So we are waiting for the outcome, like in China, how much they can produce it. So from a maritime point of view, if green methanol is ready, it's better for industries because of easy handling. But this year, ammonia, we have an engine and we have a vessel, and then we have a 2027 or 28 bunkering system is ready. Then once liner company, container carriers, they start to take action for ammonia fuel container carriers. Then I assume 2030s, majority will be ammonia. If methanol, still very difficult to secure the procurement. So that is our assumption.
That makes sense. We'll go on as well. Anton.
Okay, we strongly believe that with the shipping industry is going to happen something like with the light vehicles, with the cars. Not a single source or not a single technology is going to solve the decarbonization process. All of the technologies has their own advantage and their own challenge. We have talked about the challenge of the methanol with the scarcity of the biogenic CO2. If we talk about bio-LNG, that is a very easy solution to implement, the quantities of biomethane that a country can produce is limited for the feedstock available. Probably ammonia, we don't have a feedstock challenge, but we have other challenges, like how to handle ammonia in vessels. So we believe that the regulation needs to set up the target, set up the framework, and then let the technology to evolve and to work, and let the customers to decide what is the source that with this fulfilling this target better suit its needs. For us, what is clear, for instance, is that liquid LNG is a very promising energy vector, but more for the medium-long term. I'm coming from I spent the 15 years of my career in the LNG industry, and the gas industry didn't start for the LNG. First, the gas industry was developed, and then LNG, that has more technical challenge, came. We need to first develop the hydrogen industry, and then the liquid hydrogen industry will come later on. In Engaga Renovable, we are developing raw materials for all these solutions. We are developing biomethane projects and hydrogen projects in order to be able to fit the final manufacturers of these fuels to be able to supply different technologies to the market.
Okay. And Jens, how about you?
Yeah, I would describe it with maybe 3 words. I think it will be diverse, it will be transitional, and it needs to be affordable. What do I mean by that? Diverse, I mean, there will not be one single solution. I think what maritime companies will do first is what is most affordable, and hence they will work on efficiency measures. And there is a lot which they can still do in order to reduce CO2 emissions, like wind assist, like hull improvements, etc. And that would potentially lead to efficiency gains of up to 10–15% maybe, combined with traditional fossil fuels. However, there will also be more and more the usage of blend-in fuels from the bio side, more usage of LNG, gray, bio in particular. But I also see room for methanol, bio predominantly, but also upcoming more and more e-methanol in the shipping industry. Yes, there is the issue about scalability due to the CO2 issue. And of course, it's the more costly fuel, and there will be a competition between different sectors from my perspective on e-methanol. But the ships exist already, right? They can be used, they are existing for more than 10 years, so it's easy to apply. And ammonia will also play a role, in particular in deep sea shipping, but a little bit further out. That's how I would see, in particular, the early 2030 years. And in the later 2030 years, I think there will be much more e-fuels and green fuels being applied.
Definitely. Great. Well, actually, we are right on time, which I think is unusual. Just want to say thank you to our wonderful panel. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Don't think we came to a conclusion, but I'd just like to toss in, ammonia looks like it's really good. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia, and thank you to our panelists there for a final dialogue, expert dialogue on decarbonisation and shipping. And thank you to all of our speakers and participants throughout the afternoon. Today's conversations have truly underscored that green hydrogen occupies a unique place in the global energy transition. My takeaway is that this summit has reflected the shared commitment of leaders here to shape a sustainable energy future that is both pragmatic and effective. As we conclude, I invite you all to take the ideas that you've heard about this afternoon forward into the important work that you do, because these discussions matter, not only for hydrogen, but for the broader transition to a resilient, lower carbon global climate. Thank you for joining us here at the Green Hydrogen Summit. Thank you again to our sponsors and the organisers, of course, as well, and we wish you a pleasant journey home. Thank you.